Chapter 1: The Marriage She Never Chose. The rain had been falling over Ashbourne Manor since dawn. By evening, the entire estate seemed wrapped in a grey mist. Water streamed down the tall windows, while the sound of thunder occasionally echoed through the ancient halls. Inside the manor, dozens of servants hurried silently from room to room. Candles burned along the walls. Flowers covered the grand staircase. And in the largest bedroom of the estate, a young woman stood completely still before a mirror. Her name was Eleanor Hartwell. Tonight, she had become the Duchess of Ashbourne. But she did not feel like a bride. She felt like a prisoner. Eleanor looked at her reflection. Her ivory wedding gown was beautiful. Pearls decorated her dark brown hair, and a delicate necklace rested against her throat. Everyone would say she looked happy. But nobody could see the fear hidden behind her eyes. Only 3 weeks earlier, she had been living quietly at her father's estate. Then everything had changed. Her father had summoned her into his study one cold morning. "Eleanor," he had said, "there is something we must discuss." She had immediately noticed the worry in his voice. What happened? Her father stood beside the fireplace, staring into the flames. "Our debts have become impossible to repay." Eleanor's heart sank. "How much?" He gave her a painful look. "Enough to destroy the estate." She had remained silent. Their family had already sold several properties. The servants had been paid late for months, and even the horses had been reduced. But Eleanor had never imagined things were this bad. Then her father spoke the words that changed her life. "The Duke of Ashbourne has offered a solution." Eleanor frowned. "What solution?" Her father looked away. "Marriage." She stared at him. "To whom?" "The Duke." For several seconds, Eleanor thought she had misunderstood. "The Duke of Ashbourne?" "Yes. But I hardly know him." "I know." "And does he even want to marry me?" Her father's silence answered the question. Eleanor felt cold. "So this is not a marriage?" Her father looked at her sadly. "It is an arrangement." She walked toward the window. Outside, the gardens she had grown up in were covered with morning frost. "What happens if I refuse?" Her father's voice became quiet. "We lose everything." Eleanor closed her eyes. She thought of her younger sisters. She thought of the servants who had served their family for generations. She thought of the old house that had belonged to her family for more than a century. And she realized there was no real choice. 3 weeks later, she stood at the altar beside the Duke. Adrian Ashbourne. 31 years old. Tall, reserved, and intimidatingly handsome. He wore a black formal coat, and his expression revealed almost nothing. When Eleanor looked at him, she saw no excitement in his eyes. No happiness. Only restraint. The priest continued the ceremony. Then came the vows. "I do." Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. Adrian's voice was calm. "I do." The ceremony ended. Everyone applauded. But Eleanor felt as though she had just signed away her future. Now, several hours later, she stood inside their private chamber. The wedding feast was over. The guests had departed. The servants had disappeared. And soon, the Duke would enter. Eleanor's hands trembled. She had heard stories about marriages arranged between noble families. She knew what society expected from a husband and wife on their wedding night. She feared that Adrian would expect the same. The door opened. Eleanor immediately turned. Adrian entered quietly. He closed the door behind him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he removed his gloves and placed them on a small table. You should sit, he said. Eleanor remained standing. I am fine. He studied her face. No, you're not. She stiffened. You don't know me well enough to say that. Perhaps not. His voice was surprisingly gentle. But I know what fear looks like. Eleanor looked away. I am not afraid of you. Adrian paused. Then what are you afraid of? She had no answer. Because the truth was, she was afraid of everything. The marriage. The unfamiliar house. The expectations. And most of all, the possibility that she had lost control over her own life. Adrian seemed to understand. He walked toward the fireplace rather than toward her. You were forced into this marriage. Eleanor's eyes widened. So were you. Yes. Then why did you agree? Adrian stared into the fire. Because your family needed help. Eleanor's voice became bitter. So you married me out of pity? No. He turned. I married you because I could protect you. She frowned. Protect me? Your father was going to lose the estate. Your sisters would have been separated. Your servants would have lost their homes. Eleanor stared at him. How do you know so much about my family? I made inquiries. You investigated me? I wanted to know what kind of life you were being asked to leave behind. His words caught her off guard. Adrian continued. I know this marriage was not your choice. I will never pretend otherwise. He took a step toward the door. Eleanor watched him carefully. Where are you going? To my study. She looked confused. Tonight? Yes. Why? Adrian looked at her. Because I don't want you to feel that you owe me anything. Eleanor couldn't believe what she was hearing. You are my husband. I know. And you are the Duke. I know that too. Then why are you leaving? He gave her a quiet answer. Because a title does not give me the right to take your trust. Eleanor said nothing. Adrian opened the door. Then he stopped. Without turning around, he said. Eleanor, I know this marriage began because you had no choice. He finally looked back at her. But from this night onward, I want you to have choices. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time since the arrangement had been announced, Eleanor felt something she had not expected. Not love. Not yet. But hope. Adrian left the room. The door closed softly behind him. Eleanor remained standing beside the window. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. She looked at her wedding ring. Then she whispered to herself. Perhaps the Duke of Ashbourne is not the man everyone says he is. And somewhere in the quiet hallway, Adrian Ashbourne walked alone, knowing that he had just married the woman he could not allow himself to love. Or so he believed.